From Lagos, Nigeria, this is News Central. I'm Felicity Ezewike. The top stories tonight. Court rejects appeal to stop planned Abuja protest to demand release of Nnamdi Kanu as U.S. Embassy issues security alert to its citizens. U.S. envoy counters Christian genocide claims as terrorists killed more Muslims in Nigeria. Again, President Trump meets Volodymyr Zelensky in White House, renews efforts to end war in Ukraine.
And in business, International Monetary Fund excludes Nigeria from Africa's fastest growing economies list.
And in sport, Nigeria earns 9 nominations in women's football category of 2025 CAF Awards.
Thank you for tuning in. Tonight begins now. Tonight from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where the United States Embassy has issued a security alert to its citizens in Nigeria ahead of a planned protest. The protest tagged Free Nnamdi Kanu Now is scheduled for Monday, October the 20th. The convener and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore describes the march as a peaceful demonstration with the singular aim of demanding the release of the IPOB leader, who is currently facing terrorism charges. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court in Abuja has thrown out an appeal by the Nigerian police to stop the planned exercise. The police, acting on orders from the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, filed an ex parte motion to halt the protest organized by activist Omoyele Sowore. But Justice Umar declined to issue a restraining order and adjourned the case to Tuesday, October the 21st for a full hearing. Sowore has hailed the decision as a win for civil liberties, vowing that a protest will go ahead as planned. Let's also tell you that the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, has said that the approved list of recipients of presidential pardon by the Council of State is still under final review. According to a press statement released by the Office of the AGF, the pardon was intended to decongest prisons and promote national reconciliation. However, critics have argued that some of the beneficiaries do not deserve clemency. Staying with that story, human rights lawyer Falana has called on the federal government to withdraw and re-examine the list of 175 persons recommended for pardon by President Bola Tinubu. In a statement he issued on Thursday, Falana did not dispute the president's constitutional power to grant pardons, but said the exercise should be reviewed in the interest of what he termed justice and national morality. He argued that the current list includes politically exposed persons, alleged drug barons, armed robbers, terrorists, and people convicted of state offenses such as culpable homicide and murder, and therefore requires urgent reappraisal. We now turn to a lawyer and political analyst, Liberaso Shoma, for his view on these legal matters. Actually, we're joining two things together. 175 people pardoned by the Council of State, and now the attorney is coming back after all the feedback to say that they are reviewing the list. The contention here is, shouldn't this have been done prior to the issuance? And this statement, is it perhaps an effort to rejig that list as a response to the criticism that has trailed it?
First and foremost, thank you. One would have expected ordinarily that the committee, prerogative of Mercy Committee headed by the Attorney General would have done its job, look at the list, make recommendations to the president before the president will grant that pardon or prerogative of mercy as prescribed under Section 175 of the Constitution. But unfortunately, now the president has granted the pardon, and that is when the committee headed by the Attorney General is now supposedly reviewing. I will not put in the cart before the horse. But that said, it's also a good development. It's a welcome development. It shows clearly that the government is listening to the cries of the people, because we saw the condemnation that greeted that list. And then also, in law, we say when a law must pass the repugnancy test, a law must not be repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience. It must also not be contrary to public policy. So if a law encourages repugnancy and it is contrary to public policy, then it is good that such acts, that is the act that is carried out pursuant to that law, be reviewed. And so it's a welcome development that the Attorney General now, rather than reviewing the list before the pardon is granted, after pardon is granted, is now reviewing the list. It also shows that while we are complaining, they are also listening.
Well, just to interject there so that we don't run with that idea fully, because that statement, I took time to read it, and part of what it said, I'm trying to quote here, there is no delay in the process. It is simply following the law to the letter to ensure that only those duly qualified benefit from the president's mercy. So they're saying, how would you interpret this? Is it that, I mean, they've listened to the people that they are going to review, or they're just playing politics? Because that language there is saying there is no delay in the process. They are just following the process.
They are not following the law. The process is the committee would meet, the committee would look at the names, ensure that the people who are pardoned by the president are people who meet the requirement. Now, what we have is that the president has pardoned them, and that is when the committee is now reviewing. Do you review before pardon, or you review after pardon, or you review before pardon? So the Attorney General's statement, with all due respect to him, somebody I respect very well, a very senior lawyer, somebody, a man of few words, with all due respect to him, that statement is not simply following the law. It's a political statement, because they ought to have reviewed that list, ensure that those on the list are those who actually merit it. Because we can't be fighting insecurity, fighting corruption, fighting drug usage, and fighting criminality, and people who are convicted last year, people who are convicted 2 years ago, people who sold Nigeria, who were convicted for selling arms, are those that are being pardoned by the same government. And then, because of the cry of the people, you are reviewing the list. I expected that as government, they would have gained more mileage by saying, well, we made a mistake, but we listen to the cry of the people, or we listen to the call by people and well-meaning senior lawyers in Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians, and we decided to look through the list again, maybe because it was an oversight on our part. Hold on to technicalities of the law to say, oh, yes, we are simply following the law. That's not following the law.
I guess Falana and gentlemen like yourself have also put their voice to that matter. We'll see what happens in the coming days. But let's talk quickly about the Nnamdi Kanu's case. Now, Shaware is celebrating the court's decision. Is it a dismissal, or the fact that the court has asked that they serve notice to Shaware, but it just fell after the day of the protest? Explain it to us, please.
Normally what applicants like the police do in cases like this, they rush to court without serving the other party. They go get an ex parte order and then ask the court to issue a restraining order and ex parte injunction to restrain the other party. And in most cases, the other party is not even heard, it's not in court. But in this case, the court has said, no, I will not grant you an ex parte order. put the other party on notice. The two of you should come before me on Tuesday, argue for and put your argument for and against before me, and then I'll now know whether to grant, because it would be unjust to grant a restraining order against, the protest when I've not even listened to why they want to protest in the first place and under which laws are they protesting. So that's what the court basically said. So it is not true that the court has dismissed that application. The court simply said, state the application, come back and argue before me, but let the other party, all the parties be before me. But I think also, quickly, I think that the federal government actually, with this, the list of the pardon also is generating the call for the release. But if you follow the case genuinely, you'll find out that the federal government has closed this case. The government has closed its case against Nnamdi Kanu. It is for Nnamdi Kanu to open his own defense. And then the last time, initially, they filed a no-case submission, and the court dismissed the no-case submission and said he has a case to answer. And then subsequently, he applied for sick leave, medical treatment, that he has a terminal ailment, and was subsequently examined by the Nigerian Medical Association Board, and they said that there is no ailment that is life-threatening to him, and it is for him to open his defense.
Okay.
But like typical of everything in Nigeria, Nnamdi Kanu, the monster was created by government insensitivity, government injustice, and then the release of criminals under Section 179, under the guise of pardon, also has emboldened this call for his own release also. Otherwise, trial is ongoing, is for him to open defense.
Not to stress on that, but I wanted you to also look at the flip side of the coin. I know that some of these dates are decided based on availability of, court space and other contingency. But knowing that the protest was slated for the 20th, yet ruling that they will reconvene on the 21st, is that an implied win for those who are going for the protest?
What the court usually do is to ask parties to maintain status quo. If you look at that judgment very well, the court will ask all parties, don't take any step that will force a fait accompli on the court. What it means is, Showore, don't go on any protest, and police don't also harass them until you come back before me on Tuesday and let me decide one way or the other.
Well,
if you look at it, there's no way the court will not say in that judgment that parties should maintain status quo pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice.
Well, it's looking like Showore is not going to listen to that part of the judgment, because his statement already implies that the protest will go ahead. But let's look at the police concerns. The reason that they went to court, the U.S. Embassy has already issued a statement cautioning their citizens from going out on those days, on that day, one for traffic, clashes with police and all of that. The police is saying this might cause security challenge and, escalates to something else. Are their concerns valid? And is there a better way they could have gone about this than going to court?
The police is empowered to constitutionally maintain law and order. When there's call for protests like this, what the police should do is to ensure that the areas they know that are flashpoint, to strategically position their men, and also give provisions, give security to the people who are protesting, and ensure that they are orderly. Because we also see ruling party protests and they get police protection. It is when police becomes confrontational in some cases that protests, skyrocket and then go out of hand. So the idea of going to court via an ex parte and trying to stop the protest, it's also ill-conceived. It is not properly advised. What the police ought to have done would be to ensure that they provide security, for the protesters, and ensure that they are orderly, because Showore has said it is going to be a peaceful protest. But then also, there are some persons, they say as our faces are different, so our heart desires. There are some persons also, Showore might not fully be in control of the crowd, because there are some persons who might be coming there for something untoward, but something totally different from the ideas of the protester. That's why the police need to ensure that there's civility, that there's professionalism, highest level of professionalism displayed. It is when the protester goes out of hand that the police now can now begin to find a way to stem the tide. But rushing to court to get an order and then now use that order to begin arrest people indiscriminately, it is unprofessional on the side of the police.
I guess we'll have to see what happens in the coming days. Thank you very much, Boris, for speaking with us. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Coming up tonight, Lagos launches Omieko project, plans to introduce electric ferries. We'll tell you more when we come back. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Tonight on News Central. A reminder of our top stories. Court rejects appeal to stop planned Abuja protests to demand release of Nnamdi Kanu as U.S. Embassy issues security alert to its citizens. U.S. envoy counters Christian genocide claims, says terrorists killed more Muslims in Nigeria. Again, President Trump meets Volodymyr Zelensky in White House, renews effort to end war in Ukraine. In Lagos, Nigeria, the government has officially launched Omieko project, a 410 million euro initiative aimed at transforming Lagos inland waterways into a world-class transportation system. Translated into Water of Lagos, the project captures the spirit of Lagos with its water to build an inclusive future. News Center's maritime correspondent, Nnamdi, has more.
Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu on Friday led dignitaries and state officials to inaugurate the 410 million euro 78 electric ferry service water transportation tagged Omieko project.
This is not just a project unveiling, it is a bold statement that Lagos will lead Africa in building a sustainable, connected, forward-thinking water transportation ecosystem.
According to the governor, the state will be deploying 78 electric ferries on boosting water transportation.
Omieko's project is a comprehensive, future-oriented blueprint for a sustainable mobility in Lagos. It merges technology, it pushes environmental stewardship, it creates a smart design for the waterways that is not just navigated, but is optimized.
The launch of the project, which was executed in collaboration with French development partners, was attended by distinguished partners, key stakeholders, and community leaders.
What is one of the largest shocks that is going to affect all of us, all of the coastal cities and regions in our countries in the century to come? It is the rising sea level. This infrastructure has been designed in order to absorb 80 centimeters of rising sea level at the horizon of the century, which means that this transportation network will sustain this rising sea level and protect the city from the consequences of climate change.
Speaking on the occasion held at 5 Cowries Terminal, Falana, Lagos Island, Special Advisor to the State Governor on Blue Economy and General Manager, Lagos State Waterways Authority, Damilola Emmanuel, acknowledged the efforts of past governors for the realization of the initiative.
We're going to be seeing the influx of over 70 hybrid electric ferries to reduce emissions and boost clean mobility. We're going to be upgrading 20 jetties and terminals. We're going to be dredging and channelizing 15 routes for safer and faster transport. Capacity development for all stakeholders. And crucially, we're going to be funding the informal sector under the Vessel Industry Transition Program.
Lagos, Nigeria's largest city and its financial center, with an estimated population of 22 million, is expected to grow to 40 million by 2040. Therefore, inland waterways transportation is expected to play a bigger role in its urban mobility in the coming years. In Lagos, for News Central, Norma Obiaswalo.
To one of our headline stories now, the meeting between President Bola Tinubu and the senior advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump for Arab and African Affairs, Masad Bolos, highlights ongoing collaboration between Nigeria and the United States in tackling terrorism and improving regional stability. Bolos says both nations are expanding cooperation on intelligence sharing, training and technology support, especially in addressing threats from extremist groups and ensuring maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea. Responding to recent claims in the United States about religious persecution in Nigeria, Bolos clarified that such reports do not represent official U.S. government policy, stressing that terrorism affects all communities, regardless of faith.
There's a lot of work that we've already doing together. There's information sharing, there's technology, there's training. There are quite a few programs that we've worked on and we will continue to work on. But hopefully we can increase. We can increase that. We know that also Nigeria had recently purchased some equipment from the United States, and we hopefully will work towards the terrain. Well, know that terrorism has no color and no religion and no tribe. People of all religions and all tribes are dying as a result of terrorist acts, but it's very unfortunate. We even know that Boko Haram and ISIS are killing more Muslims than Christians. So people are suffering from all sorts of backgrounds. This is not specifically targeted about one group or the other. However, any loss of life is too many. One is too many.
The federal government has described its reforms in the financial sector as a catalyst for enabling competitiveness and transparency. This was by the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council in Abuja ahead of the International Trade and Investment Forum. News Central's State House correspondent Bettina Uweli tells us more.
It was a gathering of government officials, business leaders, and members of the diplomatic corps, all focused on one mission: positioning Nigeria as a driving force in facilitating intra-African trade and attracting global investment.
Nigeria's reforms are deliberately aligned with this vision to make our economy a launchpad for investments into and across Africa. We must continue to close the gap between policy ambition and business reality by harmonizing regulations, ensuring policy consistency, and deepening public-private partnerships. This is where collaborations with state governors and private partners become so essential.
The session, described as a precursor to a major international investment forum, highlights Nigeria's proactive approach to economic diplomacy, bringing both private and public sectors together to strengthen African trade. According to the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, the country's reforms are geared towards improving competitiveness, transparency, and investor confidence.
The government is behind private sector in attracting ADIs, African direct investments, and FDIs. ADIs, we recognize, are here on the continent. So we're kicking it off here in Abuja to signify to the international community that there are potential in the country and that they should look nowhere further but in Nigeria. There's potential in Nigeria.
This is all about getting the states involved at the subnational level. The Vice President is chairman of National Economic Council, which is essentially an interface between the federal and the national government. It's a body made up of the Vice President as chair with the 36 state governors. And this is a pre-event. It's a precursor to the main event that's going international.
Stakeholders agree that achieving these goals requires stronger coordination among states, consistent policies, and deeper public-private partnerships to ensure that capital flows freely across borders and sectors. In Abuja, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Thank you, Bettina. Folio Communications PLC is charting a new course for Nigerian journalism. This is as Daily Times marks 100 years of excellent practice. At a World Press Conference, the new milestone was described as not just an anniversary, but also a celebration of history and resilience.
Over the past 10 years, we're building a book called Nigeria, a national souvenir, and it's called the Grand Book. That book is 700 pages. So during this period, we're going to launch that book. Now, that book is meant to galvanize Nigerians to understand what Nigeria is meant to be. It's also meant to be able to play or reenact our dominance in creating Nigeria. Okay, and is also going to help us in terms of global positive perception of Nigeria. One of the biggest challenges in Nigeria moving forward is the perception. People love Nigerians, but people don't love Nigeria. So Daily Times is going to create that tool to transition that love for Nigerians to love for Nigeria, and then we then get all we need to build Nigerians that you or the young people will be proud of. So the people that founded Daily Times are all gone, but we are talking about it today 100 years after. That's legacy. So what will people talk about us? Nobody is remembered for what they take. People are remembered for what they give.
Still ahead tonight, Madagascar swears in Army Colonel as president. We will bring you this story and more after now. Let's go outside Nigeria for a bit. Army Colonel Michael Randrianirina has been sworn in as Madagascar's new president just days after a military power grab that sent President Andry Rajoelina fleeing. Randrianirina, who led the captured army unit that mutinied and joined anti-government protesters at the weekend, read out the presidential oath at a ceremony at the country's top court in the capital. The ceremony was attended by military officers, political leaders, youth protest representatives, and international delegations. He pledged to initiate the draft of a new constitution and election reform laws. President Volodymyr Zelensky has again met with President Trump at the White House for talks on ending the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president congratulates Trump on the Gaza ceasefire deal while pleading with the U.S. president to end the war. Zelensky suggests Ukraine could provide drones to the U.S. in exchange for long-range missiles. Meanwhile, Trump had earlier signaled he might be willing to give them the missiles, but after speaking to Vladimir Putin on Thursday, he changed his mind. Kremlin spokesman said on Sunday that providing Ukraine with the weapons would be a major escalation. Trump and Putin agreed to meet in Hungary during their phone call, with fresh talks between the two leaders, advisers planned for as early as next week. Hamas has accused Israel of indiscriminate and continuous destruction of Gaza, a development it says is causing delay in locating captives' bodies. This followed the allegation by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Hamas is refusing to return bodies of slain Israelis following the ceasefire deal. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has reaffirmed his determination to pressure Hamas to locate and return the remains of the dead hostages still held down in Gaza. Speaking at a memorial for victims of the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023, Netanyahu vowed that Israel will continue fighting terrorism with full force until every last fallen hostage is brought home. This declaration came shortly after Hamas returned bodies of 2 additional hostages, but said it could not access the remains of 19 others. For the situation in the Middle East, I'm now joined by global policy analyst Alexander von Rugen. Thank you very much for being here. Israel's Netanyahu has accused Hamas of refusal to release slain Israelis to him after the ceasefire deal, while Hamas is also alleging that Israel's continued bombardment made it difficult to release the bodies. Could you put this situation in proper perspective?
Well, as you know, there was a 20-point agreement that President Trump had stipulated for the ceasefire and the movement to peace in Gaza. The first point of the 20-point was the unconditional release of all living hostages and the return of the deceased ones. I think it's plausible to know that returning the living was more important than the deceased, because they're still alive and their families are putting a great pressure on the Israeli government to have pushed for the release of the hostages. I think what we see now is a politicization of the deceased. Now, as we all know, Hamas had a network of tunnels throughout Gaza, and the IDF was systematically bombing those tunnels in their fight against Hamas. I would think it's very plausible that in keeping the remains of the deceased hostages, they would have been stored in those tunnels. And if those tunnels were bombed, it could pose some difficulty in removing them in an expeditious manner. So I can't pass judgment on whether Hamas is stalling or they have a plausible reason for delaying the return. Ultimately here, both sides are accomplishing something, though. This is ironic because Netanyahu did not want to have a ceasefire. He wanted to keep the conflict going. It kept him in power. No reigning president has ever been dethroned in the middle of a war. And Netanyahu has problems within his own government. It's a minority government. He's been kept afloat by the ultra-Orthodox pro-right side of the party government, which did not want a ceasefire. So he's got pressure from them. At the same time, he has charges of corruption being thrown at him by members of parliament. There's an ongoing investigation. And he has ICC and International Criminal Court, as well as International Court of Justice charges against him. So perpetuating this conflict, or at least keeping the in status quo, is important for him. With Hamas, they have the same reason. They don't want to give up their guns yet. They want to be the policing party in Palestine. So this plays into them keeping the status quo. And here we have a stalemate on deceased bodies, which really are, I'm not going to be morally incorrect in saying it, but they're less important than the live parties, and certainly less important to going for peace in the region.
All right. How are these counter-accusations about non-compliance with the ceasefire plan by both parties likely to impact the prospects of a lasting peace agreement? I mean, fears are already coming up.
I don't think, we all hope the peace prevails. Is it a stalling tactic? Absolutely. Because the next provisions in the 20-point agenda is that Hamas surrenders all their weapons and they either stay with a pardon or they leave Gaza. And I don't think they're ready to do that yet.
What mechanisms can be put in place? Some would say this is a bit early, but the question has to be asked to ensure accountability for alleged war crimes and human rights violations committed during the conflict. And how can the international community perhaps exact on both parties to ensure compliance with the ceasefire agreement and facilitate a peaceful resolution of the conflict?
The only way to accomplish that is to put in an international stabilizing force, which has already been negotiated by President Trump. As it stands, I believe it's going to be a combination of Indonesia, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan, which will have their boots on the ground in Gaza. In addition, Jordan and Egypt will be training Palestinian police to police themselves. Oversight of that will be by President Trump himself, and he's currently got 200 American specialists in Egypt to assist and oversee the matter, but not to have boots on the ground in Gaza. So to implement this on an expeditious way, it's going to take affirmative force, which President Trump has been known to do. You will note there's been very little mention of UN peacekeeping forces or UN involvement other than humanitarian supply chains of food and resources. So I think that's the only way it's going to be accomplished. Or if it's not, and if it's ruled by a committee, I think you're going to find the usual. It's going to be paralysis through analysis. Affirmative action has to be taken, and has to be taken quickly, and I believe President Trump is going to force that issue sooner than later.
Well, let's remain hopeful, I guess, that this peace deal holds. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, as always.
Tonight returns with business, sports, and entertainment news. Do stay with us.
The IMF's latest regional economic outlook for sub-Saharan Africa, unveiled at the annual IMF World Bank meetings, excluded Nigeria from the continent's fastest-growing economies, highlighting Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Uganda instead. While growth in the region remains steady at 4.1% for 2025, resource-dependent and conflict-affected countries like Nigeria face sluggish income gains and fiscal fragility. Inflation is projected to stay in double digits in Nigeria, Angola, Ethiopia, and Ghana through 2025. The IMF credits Nigeria's recent tax reforms and tighter policies for easing inflation, but warns of rising debt service burdens crowding out development spending. The Central Bank of Nigeria and the Bank of Angola have signed a memorandum of understanding to enhance bilateral cooperation, knowledge sharing, and capacity building. Signed during the IMF World Bank annual meetings in Lima, the pact aims to strengthen financial stability and regional integration across Africa. Key areas include monetary policy coordination, foreign reserve management, payment services, systems, cybersecurity, and anti-money laundering efforts. The agreement aligns with Nigeria's goals of promoting financial sector reforms and regional partnerships under President Bola Tinubu's administration. Both central banks view the collaboration as vital for fostering resilience amid growing economic interdependence in Africa. Let's move on to the stock exchange. Well, it's a green day on the Nigerian exchange, just enough to make investors smile, but not quite enough to pop champagne just yet. The all-share index crept up by 0.42% to close at 148,977.64 points, and the market is standing firm at 94.56 trillion naira. Let's see how the sectoral performance did today. Now, sector-wise, consumer goods led the charge with 1.27%. It seems that Nigerians still like their drinks and biscuits. Running out of fuel, oil and gas slipped into the red and dropping by 0.11%, while insurance was up 0.92%, banking was also up 0.01%, and industrial goods was up by 0.29%. So a modest win for the bulls today, not a rally, but definitely not a retreat, with insurance and consumer goods pulling their weight and oil and gas dragging its heels. The market seems to be dancing to a cautious beat. As always, we'll keep watching the tickers to keep you posted on market trends. And that's all on Business Tonight. My name is Chamu Dabeng. Up next is Favor with sports.
And out of sports, Nigeria earned 9 nominations as CAF unveiled the 2025 Women's Award shortlist on Wednesday, recognizing top performance in African women's football. Super Falcons coach Justin Madugu and Flamingo's Bankole Olowokere were listed for Coach of the Year after leading their team to continental success. Chiamaka Nnadozie, 2-time Goalkeeper of the Year, made the shortlist again, while Rashidat Ajibade and Esther Okoronkwo earned Player of the Year nod. Flamingo's captain Shakirat Moshood was named among the young player nominees. Nigeria Super Falcons at under-17 Flamingos will compete for the National Team of the Year award, with Bayelsa Queens representing Nigeria in the Club of the Year category. The CAF Awards, covering performances from January to October 2025, will celebrate Africa's finest in women's football. Still talking football, Nigeria Football Federation President Ibrahim Gusau has confirmed that preparations have begun ahead of Super Eagles' 2026 FIFA World Cup second-round qualifying clash against Gabon next month in Morocco. Nigeria will face Gabon in the semi-finals of the playoffs after finishing as one of the 4 best runners-up in the qualifying series following a 4-0 win over Benin Republic. The winner of the tie will advance to the Intercontinental Playoff for a place at the 2026 World Cup. Gusau assured that team and the federation are focused on securing qualification, highlighting strong government and sports commission support. He expressed confidence in the players' commitment, noting their determination to reach the World Cup.
That a lot of people have some reservation. They ask of how do we get to that and that. But thank God, till now, at least he has justified to Nigerians why he can be the coach of the Super Eagles, because forgetting about all the friendly matches and other things, we talk about the World Cup qualifiers. He handled 6 matches. He won 4 and drew 2, whereby if we have some little resemblance of that in the first 4 matches, we could have not been where we are today. So there were a lot of issues. 3 coaches managing, a lot of people say that, but they don't want to really talk about how did it happen. It's a necessity that we can't do otherwise.
Still talking football, Nigeria Super Eagles have climbed 4 places to 41st in the latest FIFA Men's World Ranking release on Friday, marking their best position in recent months. The 3-time African champions also moved into the top 5 teams on the continent, now ranked behind Morocco, Senegal, Egypt and Algeria. The rise follows back-to-back victories against Lesotho and Benin Republic and the 2026 World Cup qualifiers, earning Nigeria an 11.6 point increase. Morocco remained Africa's top-ranked side at the 12th globally, while Spain reclaimed first place worldwide ahead of Argentina and France. The rise in the rankings comes as the team prepares for the second round of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers in Mexico next month and possible intercontinental playoff in Mexico in March next year. And to talk about appointments in football, Turkish giant Beşiktaş have appointed Super Eagles midfielder Wilfred Ndidi as the club's new vice-captain. The announcement was made by the club's board of directors in a statement released on Friday, October 17th. The 68-cap Nigerian international only joined Beşiktaş 3 months ago for a reported £8 million from Leicester City. He will now serve as deputy to Turkish international Okun Kuku, who has been named the new team captain. The duo replaced former captain Nasip Usal and vice-captain Meret Gunok as the new leaders of the first team. The captaincy duo will begin their leadership duties when Beşiktaş, currently 6th on the Turkish Super League table with 13 points from 7 matches, hosts 14 players Gençler League on Saturday, October 18th in match day 8 of the season. And to wrap up sports update, Africa's table tennis giants Egypt, Nigeria, Tunisia and Algeria have qualified for the 2026 ITTF World Team Championships in London after strong performances at the ongoing 2025 ITTF Africa Championships in Tunis. Egypt dominated Group A, while Nigeria, Algeria and Tunisia topped their respective groups to seal early qualification. In the women's category, Egypt, Nigeria, Algeria and Uganda also booked their tickets, with Uganda marking its first major appearance at the global event. The 2026 edition, scheduled for April 28 to May 10th in London, will celebrate 100 years of the ITTF and the World Championships, featuring 64 teams per gender. The qualified nations will now turn focus on preparation for the centenary global showdown. And that's a wrap on Sports Update. And Favor Itua Entertainment is up next with Kate.
Kate is here with the latest entertainment. Hi.
Hi, Felicity. Looks like we're twinning today.
Yes, green.
I love it. All right, in the world of entertainment, this one is an interesting one to start with. The Lagos State government has defended the actions of kick against and discipline officers after a viral clash with actress Sarah Martins in Lekki. Now, Sarah had accused the officers of harassment and assault while she was cooking for charity on a road median. She claimed her food items and cooking gas were seized, leaving her bruised during the encounter. But the government insists the officials acted within the law. Now, according to Commissioner for Environment, Tokunbo Wahab, cooking or carrying out any activity on public roads violates environmental and safety regulations. He noted that while the state appreciates charitable gestures, such acts must take place in designated areas to ensure public safety and order. The commissioner also linked the enforcement to Lagos #KeepLagosClean and #ZeroToleranceLagos campaigns. Now, also, actress Sarah Martins has tearfully expressed her appreciation to Seyi Tinubu after he gifted her 20 million naira and also promised to take her charity work to the next level. Now, while the law is clear, Felicity, some Nigerians are asking, should charity have limits when it is done with good intentions?
So when I saw this story earlier, I said I was going to come back to it and read it, but I kind of forgot until now. And two thoughts as you were speaking. I was like, I personally have an issue with her being gifted 20 million in the middle of this issue. And secondly, could her activity have put other road users, irrespective of what it is, charity, goodwill, is it putting other road users at risk? And has the government evaluated its actions? They said they have. So, yeah, those are the two things that if the people were at risk with her actions and this happened, they should definitely not have manhandled her in any way.
Yes.
But that's just my
because
fault.
she got hurt, right? Well, it is what it is. We'll see how this pans out in coming days, right?
Now, moving on. 2 million.
20
million.
Yes.
I mean, she showed us her thing. So, yeah, that's money.
All right, moving on. Taylor Swift is absolutely running the UK charts right now for the second week in a row. Now, the global pop superstar is holding down the #1 spot on both the UK albums and the singles charts. Talk about a clean sweep right there. Now, her latest album, The Life of a Showgirl, remains the top album in the country, while standout tracks like The Fate of Ophelia, Upper Light, and Elizabeth Taylor continue to rule the singles list. Now, this is not just about big streaming numbers anymore. It's about impact. Taylor's back-to-back dominance is a clear statement that she's not just in the game, she is the game. From breaking records to redefining pop storytelling, Swift is proving once again that artistry transcends trends. Now, critics say this era cements her as one of the most consistent and powerful voices in global music, blending lyricism, visuals, and show-stopping performances that keep fans and charts on their toes. And that does it on Entertainment News tonight. My name is Kate Adeogun.
And that's the news tonight. But before we go, here's a quick reminder of our top stories. Court rejects appeal to stop planned Abuja protests to demand release of Nnamdi Kanu, just as U.S. Embassy issues security alert to its citizens. U.S. envoy has countered claim of Christian genocide, revealing that terrorists kill more Muslims in Nigeria. We also told you that President Trump has again met with Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, renewing efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Do send us your eyewitness report. The number to do so is now on your screen. Give us a follow on social media as well, at News Central TV, or you could choose to watch us live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Apple TV, and streaming on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.